Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast.
Welcome to Plates and Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Chuk Enekwechi. Chuk is one of the most decorated athletes in Purdue history. He is a 12-time NCAA All-American with 5 NCAA medals. A 2016 Purdue graduate, he won 4 Big Ten championships and owns 4 school records. He was runner-up at the 2016 NCAA championships in the shot put and 6th in the hammer that same day. He was the 2014 and 2015 Big Ten champion in the hammer throw and the Field Athlete of the Year in 2015. Enekwechi, who represents Nigeria on the world stage, recorded a personal best shot put throw of 21.8 meters to qualify for the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games. He has competed at the 2020 and the 2024 Summer Olympic Games, taking 12th in 2020 and 6th in 2024. He was recently the Pan-African Games champion with a 21.1 meter throw, setting the national and African record. So welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I think I first ran into you in Portage, Indiana at the throws conference that they had there, and I got to listen to you speak. I got to watch you do some working out, and it really set the stage for some of the things that we did with our shot putters this year. So doing those clinics and getting out and doing some of those seminars, how is that for you? I mean, you kind of got your thing and you're kind of set on what you do, but now you get to take it to the world. How has that been?
Oh, it's awesome. Just the opportunity to give back. My career pretty much started with someone doing me a favor, and I wanted to be an athlete in high school. I didn't know what sport I joined, but I eventually joined track, and I kind of fumbled through sophomore year, fumbled through junior year, and then my senior year, right before it started, one of the officials at the Armory where I would work out, he kind of saw me and saw there was some potential, and just for free, he trained me, and he got me from throwing 53 feet to 62 feet in the shot put, and he taught me the weight throw from scratch. I threw 75 feet that year, and then I threw 208 feet in the hammer. And his name is Jean-Joseph Roman. I always give him a shout out. He's gone now, but I kind of try to keep that memory and that idea alive. And I've coached a lot of kids over the years. To some extent, I've helped out my teammates, kind of like a player-coach role for a long time too. And now I get to kind of speak from experience as a professional athlete to not only the student athletes, not only the the other guys that are competing, but also some coaches as well. So it's kind of interesting to be on this side of things. You know, now I'm 32. I'm not the 18-year-old kid that doesn't know his left from right anymore. Like, people kind of want to hear me share my knowledge. So it's really cool to be able to give back in different contexts.
The one thing that sticks out from that conference is there was a round table and you were sitting there talking, and all of your Instagram handles, all your social media handles are the Chuk says. So what I gathered, that comes from you wanted to be a professional wrestler, and you kind of built that around the Rock's saying.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of wrestling, today was just kind of a sad day for wrestling fans all over the world. Hulk Hogan passed away. So I don't know if Hulk Hogan was your era or not, but the loss for wrestling, I didn't know how that affects how you see the day.
Yeah, I got the news this morning, and I was pretty startled by it. Hulk Hogan, and you got to separate the personal stuff from what his contributions to professional wrestling, because as a guy, he was pretty rotten, and that was really unfortunate because of how big of an influence he was on pro wrestling. And you alluded to it, pro wrestling is why I got into sports in the first place. I wanted to be a big and strong guy. And a lot of the guys I was looking at weren't in the WWE. And we're talking about the mid-90s. So they were in WCW. Booker T, Bill Goldberg, Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, like those guys, they kind of inspired me to want to be a big and strong guy. And, I followed his career throughout, and he wrestled well into the 2010s. So, rock and wrestling, all that stuff, like, he's a huge part of why pro wrestling is what it is today. And he's the first kind of wrestler that transcended that media and became like a global star. So it's going to be a big loss for I think the pro wrestling community in general. And as a fan, I consider myself a part of that. It's kind of a dull start to the day. Ozzy Osbourne, we lost him as well, Malcolm Jamal Warner. So just kind of big, iconic figures and it kind of puts in perspective, like, make every day count, because like we're mortal at the end of the day. So
That's a good way to sum that up. And I think you're correct. You have to separate the wrestler from the man, because he was never going to be able to, nobody can live up, I don't think, to the character that he built and the influence he had. And then as he got older, things just really spun out of control for him, I think.
yeah, yeah. But you go back to say your prayers, to eat your vitamins and stuff like that, and he was a good figure. A lot of times, when you talk about wrestlers, they're entertainers, but they're also, in it to some extent, role models, right? So I think his character, especially in the late '80s and the '90s, was something that kids can look up to. Parents can not be afraid to show their kids, which makes, like you said, his later life events kind of ironic, because now you don't want to hear anything he's saying. But growing up, like, he was a guy that you could model yourself after. So that, as a wrestling fan, like, we're both wrestling fans, like, it's not hard to go back to that mind frame and look at those things and kind of appreciate them in a different way now.
And the sport took so much out of those guys. You look at Ben Wall, you look at Rowdy Piper, Hogan. It's just Austin. Austin had quite a bit of stuff happen in his life. It's just so hard to keep all that. In Ultimate Warrior, another one. It's just so hard, it looks like, from the outside in, to keep that balance of what's real and what's pretend, and how they put themselves in a mindset that they are that person.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, my little brother's a pro wrestler. I don't know if you know that.
No, I don't.
Yeah. So he wrestles in NXT under the name Tyreek Igwe. So I have a unique opportunity to kind of look, at things as a fan, and then a little bit of like insider stuff. But he makes sure not to tell me too much, because like you got to kind of keep that line for a couple reasons. One, just out of respect for the performers. But the other thing is, like, you want to keep that magic as well. So I'll know if he's going to be on the show, but like, he doesn't tell me what he's going to say. He doesn't tell me if he's going to win or anything like that. And it's a really cool experience, because I get to do my thing with track and field and still kind of like peek behind the curtain and watch my little brother do his thing. And the whole reason he got in, like, well, the reason he accepted that was because I'd have it on TV. My older brother watched it. I watched it. And he was actually the least entertained by wrestling growing up. Like, he had to sit through it. So now he's part of it. It's kind of a full circle moment.
Well, I didn't want to get too far into that, but I wanted to use it as a conversation starter and a segue into what you're doing now, because I knew you did have a passion for it. But the other thing you have a passion for is shot put. And you had a big summer throwing a 22-10. Did you know that was coming, or did it surprise you?
Kind of 50-50. So I've had a couple of turning points in my season. So some life events happen, some really good stuff, but it kind of takes your focus away from your competition. Like, I just got engaged in January. So things like that, as much of a blessing as it is, if you let it, it might distract you from the goal. So I came in with extra focus, trying to, one, plan the wedding with my fiance. Like, we're having a lot of fun doing it, but I also can't get my foot off the gas. So I had to start my season in January, and it was such a slow start. I was throwing like 20 high. I threw 21 meters one time over, I think, 5 meets. So in the back of my head, I'm like, maybe it's like the real life stuff that's pulling me away from what I have to do. Then I was getting ready for the World Championships, and then all of a sudden, and this is my coach's plan, we start tapering off, and in training, I'm throwing 21 highs, and then I threw 22 meters, like the easiest throw. Like, it's almost like the ball went too far. So that was in March. So at that point, I was like, all the second guessing and stuff went away. It's like, I'm doing the right thing as a man, and I'm doing the right thing as an athlete. I went to the World Championships, and we had some travel issues. Things didn't go according to plan, but I still got top 5. Then fast forward to just a month later, I opened up in Des Moines, Iowa, and my coach happens to live in Iowa. So we did a couple of days of training. Then I went to Drake Relays in Iowa. I threw terribly. Then the doubts came back in. Oh, man, maybe I'm this. Maybe I'm not focused on the right things, blah, blah. Then from Drake Relays, I was supposed to go home to Indiana. I went right back to Iowa. We had a training camp for a week. And just like that, I was throwing 21.5, 21.6, 21.7. So I knew it was kind of a mental thing. I was putting too much pressure on myself. So I came back for 3 weeks, and a lot of funny stuff happened. My car blew up. Like my engine failed on me. Got a new car. I did that with my fiance. Like we're planning the wedding further, having a lot of fun and stuff. But I had a kind of a new swagger for that 3 weeks before I had to head out to Europe. So then I go from Indiana to Croatia. First meets 21.58, qualified for the World Championships. And then it just kind of kept snowballing. I threw 21.60 in Italy. Um, and then I got back to America after 4 meets, and they're all over 21 meters. So I'm kind of like back, kind of doing a good job on the road. I got back to train for a month. My next meet was the Prefontaine Classic. And it's kind of the same thing, but my low end was up. So I was throwing 21 mid every day. Um, then we're in like late June. It's my fiance's birthday. So I bring that up because I had to go shopping. So I was planning on what to get her. And June 23rd, I had to cut practice short so I can go to the mall, pick up some last minute gifts, and then kind of wrap up the day that way. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to come out swinging. So that day I threw 22.15. And it only took me 5 throws to do it. Then I went to the mall, got her some gifts that she loved, had an amazing day. But I'm texting coach because we work remotely, and I'm showing them the videos, and I'm like, at this point, something's got to give. Because, like, I know I'm physically ready, and I can do it whenever I want to. So at that point, we were about 2 weeks out from the Prefontaine Classic. The week of Prefontaine was beautiful. I ran a camp in Portage, and I'm signing some cards with my old PB 2191, and I'm telling the kids, like, hopefully it changes next week. And then next week I threw 22 meters. So it was pretty cool. Some ups and downs, but like once the confidence kicked in, it was off to the races.
Now, in saying that, I've heard Dave Hoff talk about this in powerlifting. You reach a point where you have to conquer the weights. Once that weight's conquered, then you can start moving to your next destination. Do you feel like shot putting was kind of the same way for you? You had to maybe conquer certain distances before that allowed you to get where you are now?
I think that's spot on. Like, you can obviously have outliers. You'll catch one. Things will go perfect. But usually, and that's with all my peers as well, if you become really good at throwing 20 meters, you'll throw 21 every now and again. If you get really good at throwing 21 meters, it's the same thing. You'll throw 22 every now and again. And I personally think 23 meters is kind of like human limits. But yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. That progression is like, you conquer the weight, so you raise your basement, and then the ceiling rises eventually. And that's kind of what we did. I've been at it as a professional for like 9 years now. So what I did this past summer is what I've been trying to do for almost a decade. So I kind of like put that in perspective as well.
That's the whole thing with this, is you somehow managed to stick with this long enough to see some of these goals come to fruition. You're talking about your fiance, you're getting ready to start a life. There's not a ton of money in the shot put event.
Yep.
All that weighs in heavy. How are you able to keep your goal front and center, surround yourself with the right people, and keep making this climb to the top?
Yeah, so she makes it possible. She's got a stable job in Lafayette, and she holds it down. And I make money on the road as well, but it's like, if I didn't have her backing, this would be impossible. So that's first and foremost. Her family is super supportive as well. They were actually with me in Paris at the Olympics this past summer, and my little brother and his fiance came as well. So my family's super supportive. I lean on my siblings a lot, my mom. But yeah, that's what it is. Like they want me to do this, and I put it on myself to make sure that I'm not wasting time doing it. So as long as I'm doing it, I have to do it for real. That means I'm improving, and if I'm not improving, I got to be world class. And world class to me means I'm making these, these major competitions, world champs, the Olympics. I'm making finals. I'm scoring. Earning medals, African champion, Commonwealth Games champion, like stuff like that. And the bottom line is money. I got to make money on the road as well. So, like these things, I have that internal motivation, but I also have the external motivation. And of course, I'm not a celebrity, but I'm a public figure, so there's a lot of like noise, and it's up to me. Like I think I've gotten way better at filtering out the noise and focusing on the good parts of being a pro athlete. And I've just gotten better. Some of it's like watching my peers as well. It's like there's some of actually my best friends, and it's like I've learned from some of the young guys. I've learned from some of the guys that are older than me, and a lot of them, they don't put as much pressure on themselves. Like they turn left and they throw the hell out of the ball. And I think I learned that this year. And it's just like a lot of things. Coaches, but both my coaches, Cody Roberts and Ray Robinson, like they kind of keep me grounded, always checking in on me. So it's it's good that I'm older and wiser at 32. But the issue with that is it's easy to get stagnant, and the Dunning Kruger effect kind of plays in my mind a little bit too. It's like a lot of times you don't know what you don't know, and it's easy to kind of want to steer everything and lead the whole way. But I think I've learned to be as coachable as possible, and all those things coming together has made this the best year I've ever had.
From what you just said there, I know on your Instagram you did an interview with Dane Miller, Garage Strength.
Yeah,
Just I enjoyed listening to him. I had him on the podcast, just a great guy. But through that, he had worked with Bondarchuk, and this maybe ties back into what you just said, because me and him had a short private conversation about this. So he had athlete classifications. So you got, your Zens and you got your meatheads, and then you got your guys that kind of struggle. I often wonder, the Zen athlete, which I would imagine that you would fall into that category, just kind of listening to you and watching your training videos. Very methodical athletes. Do you think that athletes like you that are kind of in that Zen model may struggle with performance anxiety just because you are so down the line on how things need to be?
Yes, absolutely. And I've learned to let go in a couple different ways, but that's what it was. And after the Drake Relays, that first meet I was talking about this past spring, that's what I sat with my agent and my coach about. Um, I put too much pressure on myself, and I didn't allow things to happen. So having a coach has been super beneficial to my training, because if something like that would have happened, I probably would have went back in the weight room and did maybe 1,000-pound box squat or something that's not really conducive to throwing farther, but it would help my ego. But now I kind of have to look issues in the face. So that's one thing it came down to: performance anxiety. I'm worried about stuff I can't control, like what's the national team going to say, or how are they going to, are they going to get in the way of my performance, things like that. And I had to learn to just let go and be a little bit like to get out of my own mind. And I think that's what it is. So even now, my approach to training, like we're doing hard stuff, obviously, but I'm having fun. Like I look at it as a privilege to do it. So like my workouts this past week have been killer, but I'm so happy doing them, and I feel accomplished afterwards. So I kind of have like an attitude of gratitude these days. But at first I used to just kind of get stuck in my head, and it boiled over this past spring, and it might have been a catalyst to my lifetime best. I had to see where the floor was, and then once you hit rock bottom, it's only up from there.
Well, and you'd mentioned this earlier. You found a way to achieve a mental break to kind of hit this success. And I know, listening to him talk about, nobody thought a 5-minute mile was possible. And when that was achieved, he'd spent like a week in the mountains, just chilling, just hitting trails and hikes. He had let it go, and it was going to be what it was going to be. And then he come out and set this unprecedented time. So it sounds like you're starting to come to grips with that, or be able to realize what you need. What do you do to pull yourself away and find these mental breaks?
So, I think you hit the nail on the head. I alluded to it earlier. I was doing a camp in Portage the week before, literally that Saturday, Sunday, up with Mark Harsha. And he was kind of worried that it would take away from my performance. It was hot outside and stuff like that. We're outside from like 8 to 4. But to me, it's a fun trip, right? I said, yes, I'm going to show up for the kids, so I might as well show up for the kids. Like, I'll figure a way to be ready next Saturday. And that's an approach that I've never taken in my life before. And it's I think this is the most pressure I've been under, but it's like I kind of had to give myself that mental break. So I did regular person stuff. I was coaching kids, and the funny thing is, a lot of the kids didn't know who I was. So like, you're humble and you're a civilian and you're a normal person interacting with other normal people. So just hang out, going to shows, and I went up north to my fiance's family and we hung out and just like things like that. I'm not like I'm the 24/7 athlete still, but I'm not like, Rocky Balboa, like it's do or die. If I don't throw far, I'm not a good person. Like, yeah, things, let it be. I trusted my training at that point. And yeah, it's just like I kind of let myself kind of breathe, if that makes sense. Whereas like I'd watch what I would eat the night before and this pair of socks and stuff like that. I just kind of let go of that BS. And like now I just show up and throw and hopefully it goes well. I plan and I train and stuff, but now it's not so much life or death.
So on top of the mental changes, which have been huge for you, did you change anything else to help find this new mark? What did you do anything different in your training, or did you just start enjoying it more? What catapulted this?
It's a combination. So I always it helps me if I'm working out with people. They don't necessarily have to be doing what I'm doing. So for example, I work out at a public gym called Boston Fitness, and the guys I work out with they're more into like bodybuilding and things like that. But we feed off of each other. We meet up at like 5 p.m. 3 times a week, and they'll be doing shoulders, and I'll be doing squat workouts. And like they'll come over and help me, and I'll root them on if I see them, and stuff like that. Like the training that I get done at Purdue, I don't have a shot putter as a training partner necessarily, but there's some hammer throwers that work out. So we work out at the same time, and I'll be coaching them as I'm kind of looking after myself. And just having company has helped me a lot. So one thing I've made sure to do is to make sure that I have people around me that are supporting me, as I'm doing these really difficult things, and that's helped a lot. Um, on the road, you're kind of buddy buddy with some of your competitors. We move around like a traveling circus. Like it's the same guys that are competing for the same dollars. So there's a deep respect. So you kind of get that built in on the road. Um, but yeah, as far as like training partners and stuff like that, I'm able to pull from people even though they're not doing exactly what I'm doing. So that's kind of one skill that's made it possible for me to keep going. But the other parts like nutrition, I'm not super strict, but there's some key things that I do. Like I'll eat pineapples for the bromelain. It's an anti-inflammatory. So I supplement. There's a vitamin stack that I take. Creatine. I've upped my protein as of late. So just I make sure I'm pretty responsible in the kitchen, and along with the strength program, which there's some stuff that even at 32 I've never seen before. I didn't know was possible, but I get some stuff from Cody Roberts that, you know, my training's still full of surprises. So that's kind of kept it fresh for me too.
You're talking about the nutrition side, and I've heard Jordan Burroughs talk a little bit. And when he was on that Joe Rogan, he was very clear about his line. So you have to deal with WADA, and WADA's length of banned substances is so huge, and they're changing it all the time.
Yep.
How are you able to make sure you're in a spot where there is no surprises?
So I have a unique case. Even though I live in America, I represent Nigeria, which happens to be a Category A country. What that means is that WADA has deemed it that certain countries are more likely to not abide by the rules, regardless of where you live. So I think my personal opinion is that's kind of unfair. But what that means is that we're under more strict obligations. For example, before the Olympics or the World Championships, we have to pass 3 drug tests that are spaced out 21 days apart in the 10 months leading up to that championships. So other countries, if you're category B or C, like that's not an issue. But we have to worry about that. So if I'm at a competition and normally they'll pick like the winner and one other person, they'll usually pick me or another category A athlete. So I'm tested more strictly than the average Olympic athlete. How do I manage that? Well, I keep my supplements super clean. I know exactly where I go for pretty much the same exact supplements year after year after year. Um, Lab testing, so third party testing with Informed Choice, Informed Sport, and NSF has helped me. But the other part is I get most of my nutrition from food, so I don't rely too much on dietary supplements. But I use them as they're intended, like to supplement what I don't consume with actual food and drink. So, but it's something you worry about. For me, I have everything dialed into the point where the hardest part is being available for the drug test, which can happen any day, anytime, technically.
You have the benefit of living in central Indiana, so your beef can be regulated, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Pork, whatever meat you want, I'm sure you can handle that where you don't have to worry about the hormones and things like that. That I know China had some issues with that here a while back. That
yep,
it popped up. So I know it's probably stressful, even though you know you're clean. Anytime there's a drug test, it has to be stressful because you don't know the accidents that could happen.
absolutely. Yeah, the first few years that was terrifying. Like I remember I was scared to drink soda because I didn't know what was in it, and it took me a few years. I think around 2018, after taking so many drug tests and like you declare everything that you're taking and stuff like that. I was around the system, and then the following year I was put on the monitoring system. So before 2019, I'd be tested in competition, and 2019 is when I kind of my performance spiked a little bit. I threw the national record, so I went from 2107 to 2177, and there's a monitoring system where they take the top 2% of the sport, and that's when you get tested. You can get tested 24/7. So from that point, I was kind of more comfortable, even though like there could be situations with travel where you don't know the hotel you're going to be at, and if you change your whereabouts too late, then you could run into an issue. So I've had people that I know personally that have had issues with whereabouts. So like yeah, filing errors are more scary than actually like popping for something on the test.
I know you had talked about this a little bit in Indiana, so I kind of know where you fall, but there's been some stuff pop up training kids here that now I have more questions to go with that. Would you consider yourself a twitchy athlete or a strength athlete?
That's always tough. Uh, I'm a little bit of both. And I think the reason is because of my stature. So I'm not the biggest thrower, but I was exposed to lifting and stuff like that pretty early. Even though I was into the weight room since I was 16, but I was like my dad was a DJ and he had those 250-pound speakers that I was moving around from like age 11. So I knew how to apply force, and yeah, it's hard to tell. I can get on a 39-inch box with straight legs, but I can also squat 800 pounds. To me, they go hand in hand. So it's hard to distinguish one versus the other in my case.
The only reason why I was asking that is I know, you always want to hit your weaknesses, but you keep your strength strong. And as we were working with some throwers over the winter, I started noticing some of the strength guys weren't responding to the light shot put close to competition like they were the heavy.
Mhm.
And vice versa. The twitchy guys weren't handling the heavy stuff close to competition like they were the light stuff. Or lifting. The twitchy guys, the bands were frying them, but the chains were helping them. And vice versa.
Yeah.
The bands were helping the strength guys where the chains weren't hitting them as hard. Learning your body, getting with the right coach that's getting you in the right direction. How long has that kind of taken to narrow that down where you know where you want to be and when you want to be there?
Our throwing is so simple. It's mind blowing. Um, so now but with you going through that, I would say I lean more on the strength side. But the strength does lead to speed. Like Joe Kovacs, for example, like the ball goes that far because he's fast. Like the 16-pound is so sub maximal versus what he can actually press that it goes fast. Um, but I throw the 20-pound shot all year, the 16-pound all year, and I pretty much don't touch light implements. But you can see the speed that I can express. Um, so I think keeping the load on me and keeping heavy implements is what allows me to have that snap for pretty much 10 months out of the year.
Yes, that's very interesting. It was like I kind of had in my mind what I thought would help the kid. And then when we started looking at it, it wasn't. It was actually hurting. And then we went to some heavy implements and then he started
Yeah.
popping off. And I'm just like, this is not working out like I thought it should work out in my head. So I didn't know if you ever had things like that as you were coming up, like it should have worked and it just didn't.
I've had way more misfires than actual, like things lining up. So it's happened. I'm just kind of like we've narrowed stuff down so much that me currently, like I try to not even think about stuff like that. Like I throw the same two weights every day that I'm throwing. But there's been times, like for example, the first world championships I went to was maybe about a month after I thrown 21 for the first time. So we tried to peak, and then I threw 2107 in Ireland. We went over to London, and then I threw 1970. So we backed off, and nothing happened. So things like that. But yeah, these days it keeps me. And then in the weight room, we do a lot of speed stuff as well. I do a lot of agility work, 5 days a week. So it's interesting because when I was coming up, I saw some of the German writings on like the ring, that the old throws form, and there were, I think it was the Viking, I'm not sure, but someone was writing about the German athletes. So you had like Udo Bayer, who's arguably too strong, and he'd thrown, I think, 74 high, all gliders. You had Udo Bayer, the strong guy that trained for strength. You had Edward Serrell, the weaker guy that trained for speed, and you had Ulf Timmerman, the speed guy that trained for strength. And you saw that Udo Bayer had a moderate peak that lasted for a long time. Edward Serrell had a high peak that lasted a short amount of time. And then Ulf Timmerman had the longest peak for the longest amount of time. So what I got out of it is, whatever you're really good at, you train that, but you also address your weaknesses, and then you'd be the most well-rounded athlete as possible. So I kind of had that mentality even before I knew what programming was and like periodization and anything like that.
That was a lesson I had kind of learned this year was, double down on the strength and then bring the weaknesses up at the same time. Because just where that athlete's the best is what's going to carry them through. And then you just help that growth through the weak spots.
Mm-hmm.
Now you had talked about peaking in there. You have multiple or could have multiple peaks in there. So, I mean, you got an Olympic cycle, you have World Games, Pan-African Games. How do you adjust your peaking for all of these different events? Or do you just have to figure out where you want to be the best and let everything else ride?
That's exactly it. It's you figure out what's important, you prioritize it. So a good example is, like you said, we had the African Games, the African Championships, World Indoors, and the Olympics all in 2024. So I wanted to be in shape for the World Indoor Championships. That was all the way in March. So we kind of peaked for that. The African Games would be the next month. So you don't care about that. So even though it's a major championships, you have to just kind of roll through it. We're worried about reloading for the outdoor season at that point. So then I went through the entire professional season and stuff. And then there at the end, so we had national trials, which was the selection process for the Olympics. That was mid-June. End of June, we had the African Championships. So I was in shape for that, but it kind of gets tricky because it's 2 weeks. I think it was about 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks before the actual Olympic Games. So I went into the Olympics actually not in great shape because of what we had to do, in the month prior. But the plan was like be as good as we possibly can and disregard the stuff in the middle. So as a professional, it's kind of difficult when you're starting off because you want to treat everything as a big championship. But the farther you get, and especially working with coaches that know what they're doing, it's like that you can't hit 4 times in 1 year. So you got to prioritize.
And that makes a lot of sense. And the Olympics is only going to come up every 4 years. So that added weight of trying to figure that out doesn't probably hit you all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
We've talked about all the great things that are happening with you right now, but you've faced your fair share of adversity. Any pro athlete has, and you missed the Olympic standard by 5 centimeters one time.
Yep.
How did that reprioritize what you were doing and put you on the path that you're on now?
Yeah, so it's funny. It sucked, but I didn't take it too hard because I knew at the time I was throwing the hammer as well, and I was pretty much a hammer thrower throughout college. So I went to the NCAA championships. I threw 69 something. Like I got sixth place at the NCAA's that morning, and then in the afternoon I matched my PR of 20:37 and got second. So scored a lot of points in one day, and I pretty much only had 2 weeks to go from 20:37 to 20:50 to qualify for the Olympics in Rio 2016. And I got to 20:45 instead of the 20:50. But it's weird because like at the end of that, I was proud of myself for the attempt, and then I knew if I just waited one more year, I'd probably throw 21 meters and not worry about 20:50. And then the next year I threw 21:07. So it was one of those things like, don't get mad, get better. Just went back to the lab, and then I had to convince my mom to like let me keep throwing because like I'm not wasting my time. I could be really good at this eventually. And even I think even now, like she doesn't get it, but she loves that I'm succeeding and she loves that I love it. But yeah, it's just I didn't take it too hard, even though it was kind of a heartbreaker. It would have been a heartbreaker if I never made it back to the games, though. So I think 2017 was just like proving to myself that I can do it. 2018 is like, what the hell is it going to take for me to get to Tokyo? So,
And that's like you said, being it's worked out the way it has, it was just a learning lesson. But
yeah,
yes, if that was your one shot, then your opinion on it would be totally different, I'm sure.
1000%. Yeah, yeah.
I've asked this question to a few people, and I don't know that I've ever conveyed the true question to get the answer that I thought was in there. I know you listen to Louis Simmons talk about it. It's even in super training. They would jump out of sand, the different foam boxes. Louis had guys lifting out of foam, the different tops of the boxes, things like that. Surface changes.
Mm-hmm.
Throwing, will you change the surface to either slow you down or speed you up? Let's say you have a real slick wood, high polyurethane surface that you're throwing off of because you want to throw for speed. And then maybe you're working on something else, so you want to go to something that's slower like concrete. Do you ever change that looking for something to help your throw?
Absolutely. Shoes are really important to me. My style is very linear driven. So, and literally, like I turn left and I try to sprint as hard as I can across the ring. And some of that is like that's what works the best when you're 5'10" and a half, 5'11". So I need to be really fast across the ring and really strong on the block. So I tend to like slower rings. So if there's a fast ring, then I'll put on slower shoes, or I'll probably use water to try to slow down my shoes. But I don't think I've come across a ring that's too slow to work. Whereas some of the other guys, and especially the bigger guys, like that carry more mass, have issues turning on a slower ring. So, but I've had issues with rings that are too fast. So I can slow them down either with the shoes that I choose to wear, or like just creating the surface tension with water.
You talked about in there, you're a smaller thrower,
Mm-hmm.
height wise. Now, stature wise, you're a pretty big dude, but height wise, you don't have that arm reach that some of those other guys have. So you have to build a bigger separation in there somewhere because you don't have the leverage the other guys have. How are you able to get more torque on the ball with the size you have?
Yeah, so a lot of it's mobility work. So, you talk about mobility, it's like being strong through a wide range of motion. So we do a lot of different things. The technique itself has the potential for generating torque, but outside of the actual ring, like we use med balls for different types of throws. Like we throw, from a supine position, med ball against the wall. I might use barbells to do twists. There's one lift that went viral. So it's called a barbell arch and behind. So I start behind me and then I bring it up like I'm rowing a boat, like I'm rowing an oar, and then I bring it right back behind me. I used 135 for that in a public gym, and like people lost their minds when they saw it. But all that's letting me do is like generate force from my legs and a torqued up position, and then transfer that into my arms like I do in the ring. Um, but yeah, med balls, different variations of core work in the weight room. These days, I'm doing more anti-rotation work, so things like pal-off lifts on a cable column, just stuff like that to keep me as flexible as possible, but as strong as possible through a long range of motion. And then if I use proper technique, that ball's going to be way behind me. And you're not even like pushing it per se, you're like pulling it from behind your hip. So you want that slingshot effect. And the goal is to have a thick, flexible midsection that allows you to do that.
That was a key point that we worked on this year, was getting the ball behind the hip. I think in Portage, they talked about that a lot. Capos did a great job of really breaking that down. Brian Allen did as well, and it was things that I hadn't really thought of. And then you start watching the demonstrations, and you're like, okay, I have some shorter throwers, so that needs to be a focus for them, is to find that range of motion wherever they possibly can.
Absolutely.
You had talked about throwing indoor, and then you throw outdoor, so the ring changes. It's a smaller ring in indoor, isn't it?
No, it's not smaller, but it's just not concrete. The outdoor rings are all concrete, so indoor rings tend to be faster.
So making that adjustment from indoor to outdoor, is it pretty seamless, or do you have to kind of prepare for that change?
The more experience I've gotten, the better it's been. But I remember like in college, it'd be a pretty drastic change for me. And I wasn't as balanced as I was, as I am now technically. But the other thing is I also weighed about 240 in college, whereas now I'm 300 pounds. So the mass itself gives you a layer of balance and the ability to not be influenced too much by the surface you're throwing on. So that's helped me. But yeah, it does make a difference. The first, I would say about 7 to 10 days, you notice it, like your foot grinds a little bit slower on the concrete versus like maybe the wood surface or the painted surface indoors. So there's a difference, but like the older you get, the more experience you get, it's kind of a more seamless change.
You brought this up that you're 300. With your height and your metabolism and everything that goes into it, how hard is it to stay at 300?
See, I'm lucky that I'm so old now. So my metabolism has slowed down. When I was bulking up to this, and that's about 3 years ago, it was really hard. I was shoveling in as much pasta, white rice, the ground beef. I stayed away from chicken and fish because they would make me too lean. And not even lean's not the word. It'd make me too skinny. It's just not enough nutrients and calories packed in white meat and fish. So yeah, ground beef is what I settled on. It's cost effective, but it's something that's easy to get down. Whole eggs. So it was really difficult to get up to this weight, but maintaining is not so bad because I've kind of gotten a routine going.
I know when you listen to Jay Cutler, the bodybuilder, talk about it, the things he had to do. Now, granted, he was supplementing, but
sure,
the sugar and things that he had to take in because it hit his body harder than, like you said, fish and some of those things. He just couldn't hold that size. So I get what you're saying. You're going to have to find more calorie dense food.
Exactly.
Now with that, you're traveling a lot. I've watched like Brian Shaw and some of those guys on videos that when they get there, they got their rice cooker and they stay to a pretty close menu to what they're used to.
Yeah.
Is that where you're at, or do you go out and hit a few restaurants, or how does that go?
I do just like those guys. I eat very simple. You find a carb source that you know and like. So for me, it's always white rice or pasta. And then even the meats, you got to be pretty wary because there's some things that are regional that you don't know. Like once I went to Brazil and I tried their local fish, and I guess it's covered in a mucus that we don't digest. So it literally ran through me. So that was one of my first professional tours. So I don't experiment at all anymore. It's just like stuff that I'm used to. And I eat pretty plain when I'm on the road. So one, obviously you want to perform well, but the other thing is you want to feel good day to day. So you always want to eat something that you know so that you can kind of predict how you're going to feel about it.
There was a few other questions I had in there. Just building strength at the longest point of the throw. Now you're fast at the longest point of the throw. Are you just trying to get faster there, or are you trying to build strength up in that portion as well?
So do you mean in the weight room or just my approach to the throw itself?
Your approach to the throw. I would imagine that if you're wanting to build strength, you can only probably do it either with a heavier implement or something in the weight room. But that would, I guess, would be where the question would fall. How do you improve that?
Yeah, so there are some people like to use the word specific strength. I don't want to use it wrong, but like there's some exercises that have a better carryover in the weight room, such as the niter press. It's like a standing bench press, and we use our feet. So I'll offload my feet and land left foot in front, right foot in back to kind of mimic the release of an actual throw. And that's a commonality. All the top guys do it. So that's something we've been doing for the past several years. Even speed bench can help as far as like, being not only explosive, but explosive in a long range. So that's the key to throwing. And then something I've done recently in my actual throw is it's funny, like I'm not trying to put the ball so much as I'm trying to throw it with my thumb down. And it's hard to see it on video, but it's kind of my approach to it, and it allows me to have an acceleration that's more constant. So a lot of times people try to put the ball and they'll come to a stop. For me, I'm just trying to go through that point. So mentally, I'll approach it as if the fastest point is after the release, so that my acceleration is as constant and as long as possible.
That makes a lot of sense right there, what you just said. So you were talking about some of the bench presses and things you do. Do you stay with dumbbells, or do you stay with a barbell, or do you find that dumbbells may work better because of the isolation of the one arm?
It's funny, we always do both. So we'll do a variation of dumbbells, we'll do a variation of barbell, but in pretty much every single program I've gotten as of late, we've had both. It might be flat dumbbells, it might be single arm dumbbell, and you're holding the off arm in extension. It's a lot of different variations. We do bench press, like straight bar. We'll do a pad bench with a pause, pad bench, explosive bench. But we always pair them. And then the other thing is we vary the bench angles as well. So it might be, I've had seated shoulder press, I've had incline, 30 degrees, 60 degrees, 45 degrees, and obviously flat bench as well. So, but we pair those, so we do a lot of the unilateral work as well as the barbell work.
I'll hit you with a few more questions. I mean, I know you've probably already trained today and you're tired and probably want to go home and eat, so I won't keep you all night, but I'll hit you with a few more before you wear out. Isometrics in the thrower, I've often wondered, and I've even experimented with a little bit, that if you can get off to the side of the ring, get some isometrics in, will that help potentiate a throw?
I think so. And it's not just isometrics, like just any kind of band work that's overloaded. Isometric is one way, but if you overload it, like I travel with bands and I warm up with bands as well, and I train different parts of my throw or potentiate different parts of my throw. Like the left arm is going to swing to open the door. I'll use the band and I'll go through that motion to potentiate the actual throw. And I'm 100% for that. And that's something that you'll see all the other top guys doing as well. Like they all travel with bands. If it's not a band, then working up against a pole and doing the same thing, something that's immovable that you'd have to overcome. Yeah, that I think has a great translation acutely, like in the moment, but also long term if you could build up that connective tissue, and also just the motor patterns. It may have some carryover to the throw. So I'm a big proponent.
I feel like if nothing else, mentally you gain an edge because if you believe in that training, you're going to believe that it helped your next throw.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and then it's also it's a cool way to get that motion without actually getting a throw. Like you'll get your warm ups in, but you can fire the hip without actually throwing, like things like that. So you can get the benefit of throwing just in a different way, and that's a really good tool to use. Yeah.
And for your analytical athletes, like we talked about earlier, it's definitely a way to hopefully get some of those bugs out prior to entering the ring.
Yeah. From experience, yeah. Absolutely.
You're coached remotely. I know you probably make time to get in front of your coach, but a lot of what you do is through remote.
Yep.
What are the benefits and the downfalls of that setup for you?
Yeah, that one's pretty easy. The benefit is I'm responsible for my day to day. So I get stuff done, um, and then I have to report back. So, it kind of gives me a layer of responsibility and sort of autonomy, but I'm just executing. I tell them all the time I'm running their place, but it's like I'm also in charge of my day to day, so I have a deeper understanding of what I need to do. If things go well, I tend to know why they went well more so than an athlete just kind of taking dictations from their coach. So I think I've owned my throw because I'm in charge of it day to day. But I do record everything. I talk with coach every couple days, if not every day. So I do report back, but it's just like to execute it in the moment, it's all on me. So it's kind of giving me a layer of maturity. The downfall to it is that, like, one, coach knows me to the point where he can tell me what to fix on one throw, whereas I would need to watch it and sort of, spitball and figure out what I need to fix. So whereas if I was in front of coach, it would take one throw to fix it or two throws. If I'm by myself, it might take 3 to 5. So that immediate feedback, especially like when it's quality feedback, is what I miss that day to day. But again, as an experienced thrower, I don't need to be kind of guided through practices as much as maybe a novice thrower would. And then the other part is, coach gets fired up. So if I'm there, I'm not going to waste his time and throw BS. So when he gets fired up, it's like, it's easy to throw, not just for yourself, but to throw for your coach. So whenever he's there, I tend to throw farther anyway. So I miss that if I'm not at a training camp.
When I was roping a lot, I'd go out there and I'd just have some god awful days. The loop just didn't feel right. You couldn't hit your shots. Things were just crappy. The only thing I could tell myself was the bad days are what's setting up for the really good days. You're a professional athlete, but do you ever have days where you just hit the ring and you're like, holy cow, this is horrible? And then you have to fight through that to get yourself back to just kind of an even playing field?
It happens sometimes. Luckily, they're not as often as they used to be. And that's for two reasons. One, I kind of know the throw a little bit better. But the other thing is we plan everything to put ourselves in the best possible situation to succeed. So I never enter the ring coming off of a lip like the day before. We've planned out the schedule that way. So a lot of times, like when throwers, like it's almost like your golf swing. If you lose your golf swing, like throwers can like lose their mojo in the ring. But a lot of times it's because we lift so heavy or we're so beat up that you go in and you're trying to be as light and as agile as possible. And just like your body's like, no. And you warm up and your body's like, no. And then you start throwing, it's like, hell no. So we try to eliminate that as much as possible, even though there's a time and place for that. But yeah, I've experienced that to where it's like, just you pick the ball up and it even feels heavy. It's like, I think I'm doomed. And then sometimes you wind up, you are screwed for the day. So you just got to tack that one off and then have a short-term memory and get after it the next day.
The one thing through all of your videos I've watched and being around you is you have just an incredible back. It is freaking huge. How important is building that back for the thrower? I mean, we think about the press and we think about all different things, but building the lats, building the erectors, all of that, how important is that?
Paramount. It is totally important to build the back. I lucked out. Some of it's genetic. I've always had big traps and shoulders and wide lats, but it's funny. Some of the things you have to do for the throw, for example, you always want to do a hinging movement. And to hinge, you have to use your traps, you have to use your lats, you have to use your erectors. So these things are worked, they get that benefit of what you have to do regardless of, building it, like trying to achieve hypertrophy. So just holding a heavy barbell is going to build your biceps, and it's going to build your traps and your deltoids and your lats and your rhomboids. So I have that benefit of I'm carrying heavy shit all year, and I think a lot of it is just a side effect of that. I was also a hammer and weight thrower, and some of the specific movements lean towards that. But I think the other part is like it's a genetic component as well, because there's some throwers that like the Canadian Ethan Katzberg, and he's super strong and he does all the specific strength stuff, but he's not a thick athlete, and I'm sure he's not super strong in the weight room, but in the ring where it counts, he's super strong. But I think a combination of me doing the stuff I have to do to throw, and then the natural propensity to put on some muscle is kind of like why I have some of those striking muscle groups. So it's a good benefit, good side effect.
Yeah, you can't complain about it. It shows up good on Instagram, so you always got that going for you.
I appreciate it.
You can't chase how the other guys are training. You have to find what works for you, even though it might be pretty tempting to try to go down some of these areas other guys are pursuing. If it's not for you, it's not for you. How long has it kind of taken you to feel comfortable in your own skin and do what benefits you?
I think as soon as I got with my current coaches, and before that, so I worked with Keith McBride throughout college, so I would just do what Keith said, and we worked together, did good work. And then when he left to Kentucky, I was pretty much on my own as far as like building the throw and stuff like that from around 2018 to 2023. So it's like there'd be a lot of looking over the fence and seeing what other guys are doing, getting inspiration and stuff. And here's the thing, I think I've learned a lot from the coaches that have come through Purdue as well. I've learned a lot from my competitors, and then there are some of like the coaches that saw me in college that I see today as a professional, and I've learned from them as well. So I've taken all those lessons, but now I have a plan that's written for me, and now I don't have to guess, I don't have to spitball anymore. I can just run their plays. So I benefited from kind of being in the fire and like, spinning my wheels by myself. But now it's like all I think about is how to get me from point A to point B according to their plan. So the noise is gone, and it's now I'm sharing some of the ideas. So it's pretty cool.
Well, man, I could ask you questions all day. I always enjoy the answers and how thorough you are in answering the questions, but you do have a life. So I'll kind of wrap up with this here. We know you're a WWE fan. We started off the show kind of with that. Are you also a big Jeopardy fan?
Yeah. I think that's all I watched on TV besides WWE.
Now they have like pop culture Jeopardy. They have sports Jeopardy. They have multiple avenues to watch Jeopardy. What's your favorite of all of them? Is it just classic Jeopardy, or do you have one that you like a little better?
So my favorite is the classic Jeopardy, the regular one with Ken Jennings. Pop culture Jeopardy, hosted by Colin Jost, I think it's too easy. Then there's the Masters, and that one made me feel stupid. Those guys are so smart. Like, I'm big on trivial knowledge and stuff, but those guys are like, that's their lives. They quiz as like, they quiz professionally. So once I watched a few seasons with my fiance, it's like, we only know like one or two clues. So I'll watch it. I have it on TV, like not expecting to get any answers. But with the regular classic Jeopardy, like I'm a pretty good player.
Of all the hosts it's had, who's your favorite?
I like Ken because, see, Alex Trebek was so seasoned, and he was blunt and honest. So if he wasn't interested in the story, he would just kind of cut you off and move on. And like some of his responses were kind of sharp. I think it's funny, but it might have been hard as a contestant. Whereas Ken Jennings is like super like personable, and a lot of these guys are not interesting, but he'll pretend as if they are. So like he's got that interpersonal skill that Alex Trebek didn't have quite as much. But Alex is the OG, so like I'll give him the edge.
And another hobby you have possibly is voice impressions.
Yeah.
So who do you do the best?
Who do I do the best? Oh man, I don't want to do one right now, but a few rappers like Jay-Z, Biggie, 50 Cent. Um, I got a good Donald Trump. So yeah, there's a few of them.
Well, the
A
next
lot of wrestlers too.
next time I catch you in person, when it's not on tape and it can't be held against you for the rest of your life, I'll have to hit you up for some impressions.
Exactly, you nailed it. Yeah, we'll do.
Well, man, this was more fun than I ever thought it could have been. I appreciate the time getting through all these questions. I was so excited when I saw you hit that big throw because I know you've dedicated your life to it. To see somebody succeed, that's always great. So thank you for taking time to come on the show and talk about all those things.
Thanks for having me. You made this easy. Like, this is a fun conversation.
I sure hope so, man. I want people to come on and I want them to have fun. So,
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
well, have a great evening, man.
Yep, you too.